Why does Keranos give me, his toughest soldier, the hardest battles, putting the One Ring into legacy death and taxes? Hello folks, Phil Gallagher aka ThrabenU here for another legacy video, and today I have been given quite the challenge from Clint, who has asked me to put 4 copies of the One Ring into legacy death and taxes. So this is coming off of a comment I made where it seems like you could just throw the One Ring into any fair deck and it's going to be good, and I was immediately called on this comment. First, I just want to start with a tiny bit of context about Legacy right now. Orcish Bowmasters is everywhere, and Death and Taxes is a deck that is full of X1 creatures, so accordingly, it's maybe not the best time to be playing Death and Taxes, and people are exploring all sorts of wild options, including splashing black for Orcish Bowmasters, or going into red for Magus of the Moon to prevent people with greedy mana bases from casting Orcish Bowmasters in the first place. And so many D&T pilots are looking to cards that used to see play in the deck but have sort of fallen out of favor that have more than one toughness. Because as you've seen in a couple of my videos, if you are just on mono 1 toughness creatures, Orcish Bowmasters can tear you apart, especially if you are in a blue shell. So today we're gonna try some absolutely wild, unhinged shit, to be just completely straight with you, and we're gonna see if the One Ring fits into this shell. And there's kind of some inherent problems in trying to do this in Death and Taxes. And one of the biggest ones is that Spirit of the Labyrinth has become one of the premier 2-drop slots in current builds of Death and Taxes. And this is kind of bad for us on 2 levels. Number 1, this is an X1 creature that just dies to Orcish Bowmasters, and number 2, this is going to stop us from drawing cards with the One Ring. So, what's happening here is I'm adding a 4-drop to my deck while removing one of my premier 2-drops, and we're going to have to find a new 2-drop to replace this, and the options are a little bit dubious, because those cards either maybe aren't a high enough power level or don't have enough consistency or get in the way of our own deck in some capacity. And so I went down the brewing rabbit hole and I decided, fuck 2-drops, we're going to 3-drops. And I'm going to warp the deck building a bit here. We're going to have our other hate bear exist at 3 mana as Archon of Emeria, which doesn't die to Orcish Bowmasters and is quite strong versus combo. It's also going to play into some of the other strengths of the One Ring, although it's not necessarily the best with it in play, as you can't just vomit cards onto the battlefield. While I think it is very incorrect to play both Chrome Mox and Aether Vial in a Legacy D&T deck, subbing Chrome Mox for Aether Vial might actually make a lot of sense in this particular build, because the One Ring plays so well with fast mana. Now, we're not going to go so deep that we're going to play Lotus Petal in our Death and Taxes deck, but I think Chrome Mox for Vial is a swap that is going to make some sense here. And similarly, if we want to use our 3-drops as more consistently 2-drops, then something like Ancient Tomb becomes a little bit more reasonable, and this is something that will also help us power out the One Ring when we need to do that. So we're going to be in kind of a different ballpark of Death and Taxes today, but the core of the deck is definitely still going to be the same. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we're playing today. Now, today's video is sponsored by both Moxfield.com and Cool Stuff Inc. If you end up needing some paper magic cards, please check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% off your order at checkout. All right, so this is the shell that we are going to be playing with today. Just kind of briefly talking about some numbers. Generally speaking, a Yorion Death and Taxes decklist is going to run either 33 or 34 lands, with the difference oftentimes being how many copies of Timeless Dragon you run. I'm opting for 34 because we are playing extra 4-drops in our deck, and my opening hand really needs to have access to 3 mana most of the time. You'll notice here that I've really cut down on X1 creatures. We're not running the full playset of the Recruiter of the Guard. We're down to 1 copy of Flicker Wisp. And we're trying out some other bodies as well that have hateful effects but don't just immediately die to Orcish Bowmasters. I've probably gone too far, like, down the rabbit hole of trying to play around Orcish Bowmasters, but I think the format has changed. Like, Orcish Bowmasters is, roughly as popular as something like Surgical Extraction or Force of Will. So just kind of like keep that in mind when I'm talking about these things. And what we have produced here is something that still has a lot of the advantages of Death and Taxes. That is a strong endgame inevitability with like Yorion blinking permanence and giving you that extra card advantage and that extra body. But we have kind of a weird burst of speed off Ancient Tomb that allows us to play different hate cards that our opponents might not be prepared for in the given matchups. And one card that I'm excited to try is the Battle of Bywater, which destroys all creatures with power 3 or greater, and then you get a food token for each creature you still control at the end of that. And this is a card that I've never played with before. I've started seeing it pop up as a 2 of or a 3 of in a lot of deck lists online, and especially if we're going to be trying to play creatures like Archon of Emeria that aren't going to die to that anyway, there may be something to that card. Now, is there some awkwardness in this exact deck list? Oh, yes, absolutely, right? Like, we're going to be playing Serenity because it is so powerful for the artifact-based matchups in a deck that also has Chrome Mox, but, the original version would have had Aether Vial anyway. Thalia is still going to make the one ring cost 5. The deck list isn't going to be perfect, especially as a first draft trying something as weird as this. But this is one of those times in Legacy where it's very important to experiment and try things out, even if you don't necessarily think that the thing that you are going to do is going to be good, because you are going to learn a lot of things by trying it out. That said, let's go ahead and hop into the league. And in case you missed the announcement previously, I do have ThrabenU shirts on sale now. Go ahead and check out the link to Bonfire in the video description if that's something that interests you. And let's battle. Hey, Phil from the future here. If you are here for memes, watch round 2. That's the round for you. If you are here for tight, tense, strategic magic, watch every single round of this league, even if you need to come back to this video later to finish them. There's a lot of really technical, really interesting lines in this video, and a lot of new cards and sort of changing heuristics and play patterns that I think will be really useful to you if you're like a high strategy gamer. Enjoy. What year is it? I haven't kept a hand that looks like this in a very long time. It'll be solid versus... Oh, it is fair shit. I didn't expect fair shit after Badlands being my opponent's opening play here. Alright, so we're probably playing against a Grixis Delver deck list from the look of things. Given that I have multiple removal spells in hand that I'm not going to be able to play around Daze super easily, I'm just going to go ahead and jam a Stoneforge Mystic. If I get a Cauldra out of this, or a Batterskull out of this, cool. If I don't, that's fine as well. So my normal heuristic here is to just grab Cauldra, because if they don't have the removal spell, cool. But it may just be that since I have the one ring in my deck, that changes that heuristic, and I want to be able to get Batterskull to gain the life to offset card draw from the one ring. I am going to do that. I'm not sure if that is correct. This may be me just getting into my own head and not doing the objectively strongest thing. Snuff out is fine. So I expected my opponent would have one of... Oh, are you on a no cantrip hand? You are... Okay, no, there is a blue land. Sure, that's fine. Alright, cool. Yeah, let's start jamming cards, and due to my opponent fueling their graveyard, I do think it is correct to just play this, even if it does get dazed. Yeah, that's fine. Because I don't want my opponent generating a ton of fuel and selection with this card. Plus, like, every card that Daze hits now is a Daze that's not hitting a Batterskull later on. Am I just going to eat an early Murktide? Seems like yes. I'm willing to take 2 here. I can cast a Dazeable Batterskull. Ancient Tomb damage is just really awkward because it changes the clock on Murktide Regent. I don't really feel like playing Skyclave gets me anywhere. It's just like, what are the chances my opponent has another Daze or Force? They have not cantripped at all. They have 3 cards remaining in hand. Counterspell is of medium likelihood. It also could just be a blue cantrip that they did not have the ability to cast on their own turn because like they led on Badlands. I think I'm going to try to high roll this Batterskull. I think Batterskull into Jitte has a good chance of getting my opponent by surprise, should it work out, and the Germ token doesn't die to Snuff Out, which is kind of huge as of right now. Wasteland is okay. I still get to try Jitte and equip on my own turn, and there aren't probably going to be 4 card types in Graveyard for Dragon Rage Channeler. It's possible. Oh, fuck. Yeah, okay. I guess I'm glad that my opponent didn't do that at instant speed and also just blow me out in terms of mana. Alright, not dead yet. In bad shape, though. I'm going to play a Skyclave. I will take out this creature. That has the very, very likely potential to just get larger on my opponent's turn. I am dead to a Lightning Bolt. We'll try to... Man, I am so... I'm basically already dead to another Bowmasters, right? Yeah, I'm basically already dead to another Bowmasters, so this is fine. God damn it. Fuck this card! Yeah. So that reduces me to exactly 0. So, I probably don't mind playing these as a way to destroy Murktide Regents and Dragon Rage Channelers. Lauren is not appealing here. How do I feel about the One Ring in this matchup? I legitimately don't know. I'm medium on Recruiter and Flicker Wisp for being 1 toughness creatures. I'm medium on the One Ring for being a 4-mana card versus a Daze deck where my life total is relevant. At the same time, the One Ring like buys me 7 or more life sometimes from stopping a Murktide Regent. It is also bad versus Orcish Bowmasters, though. So maybe I will keep a couple. I don't think most other things are reasonable here. I could play Lauren as a 2-1 with some other fringe utility, but I don't... Again, I'm trying to hedge against Orcish Bowmasters as hard as possible for reasons that are probably obvious after watching that last game. Boy, that's a weird hand. Probably a keep. Probably throw back Batterskull. And boy, I hope my opponent does not force at will this Chrome Mox. I am not ready for that shit. I'm gonna pitch Solitude. And I think sometimes I just, like, my opponent has mulliganed once. I think sometimes I just win the game by casting Anointed Peacekeeper on turn 1 and stopping my opponent's only fetch land. God damn it, they also have Snuff Out. So I basically have to name Snuff Out, unfortunately. My Thalia is not good versus the Orcish Bowmasters that's there. I can maybe play around Daze at least to some limited extent. Well, that's interesting. We get to battle for 3. I think I'm just going to put my Yorion into my hand. That's so bad against Daze, though. Yuck. Alright. Let's just make life awkward for my opponent. Maybe force a non-timely brainstorm here. Okay, cool. So I imagine that Daze is now buried. The same could be true of Snuff Out. That's a little hard to tell. I think this is gone. Oh, cool. We are actually going to get damage off of Thalia, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. My opponent did shuffle. Cool. Hit you for 5. That puts you to 10. I think I leave up Caracas and take a little bit of damage to just put this Yorion into my hand. I have the ability to save Thalia from Orcish Bowmasters. I can cast a Swords to Plowshares, potentially uncounterably. Fuck you. Fuck you, Wasteland. Yeah, alright. So my opponent will leave phases, so I lose that mana. And they're not even gonna cast the Orcish Bowmasters on my turn. Yep. If I cast Swords to Plowshares for 2 mana right now, I do so in a way where it is completely uncounterable. I don't think I care about that. My opponent's thinking about doing a chump block here. Alright, my opponent went into the tank for a couple minutes, honestly, for blocking. Now, I think I just jam the Yorion here. I think the days that my opponent had is gone. And note that this is not an instantaneous blink. I don't know. I think they probably still have that snuff out. So I'm not going to go ahead and blink Anointed Peacekeeper to name something different. I'm just going to kind of safely have my stuff in play, hope that I can Swords to Plowshares, a Murktide Regent, and continue to stay aggressive in this game. Okay, so there's the full price paid for Snuff Out, which is totally fine. And we'll go ahead and just continue to crash on in for some damage. That was a pricey Snuff Out here. Notice my opponent chump blocking. And we've got a removal spell handy for a Murktide Regent. I'm a little unsure what's in my opponent's hand. Like, it feels like there's a Murktide Regent. I'm not sure what the other cards are. It's possible there's like a secondary Snuff Out or something, and it was just like awkward. Alright, we're apparently chilling, which probably means they have a Lightning Bolt or equivalent removal spell to use. Let's try to crash in for 3. It worked. I'm not going to play this Plains. I want to bluff that I have more relevant cards than I actually do. Okay. That's reasonable. Murktide Regent and Lightning Bolt are the good cards here. Mishra's Bauble is very slow. I don't have enough experience playing against this card yet to know how I'm supposed to sort this. Part of me wants to just give them the Murktide Regent, because I have a clean answer to it. I can't put Murktide and Lightning Bolt in the same pile. I think I'm going to put Lightning Bolt and Bauble in the visible pile. Okay, so they are taking the Lightning Bolt. That's fine. That kills this, but leaves my opponent in a situation where they're still at 2 life. All right, they're doing that on themselves. All right, so they have another Bauble. A Restoration Angel would be kind of sick in this deck. There's a fetch. My opponent can clear the top card of their library if they would like. Okay, my opponent gave it some thought and Lightning Bolted my creature. Alright, unfortunately, I have drawn a Plains for my turn, so I don't really have a valid play here. And they're going to go for an end of turn, crack the Bauble on themselves, because they have that Polluted Delta in play. And they are going to fetch to clear. Mystic Sanctuary for Sauron's Ransom again. That's solid. There's a Murktide Regent. That is perfectly beatable. I hate giving my opponent 8 life, though. I'm going to hope to cast this in response to a Sauron's Ransom. I have plenty of mana, so I'm just going to wait to see what I draw. Ooh! I'm going to go ahead and just pass the turn here. And when my opponent fires off that spell at their end step, I'm going to Swords to Plowshares in response before they have a chance to end up with a Force of Will in their hand. Okay, cool. Awkward. Can't give them double Lightning Bolt. I don't really want to give them a threat right now. If I give them a threat and a Wasteland, that's not bad. Maybe I offer them double Lightning Bolt, and then they're going to think that whatever's under here is like a Murktide Regent. I am going to do that and hope that they pick this pile. Negative, they took double Lightning Bolt. So now I hope to draw an ETB value creature. Okay, sure. That is not an ETB value creature. I am fine just casting this now. Like in worlds where I draw like a Recruiter of the Guard or a One Ring or something, I have like, there are turns where I can use just an absolutely ungodly amount of mana. I'm okay just putting this in play. Sure. So there's my opponent's creature, which is something I did not want them to have, and now it's hard for me to connect because they have a couple of lightning bolts. Alternatively, they can just attack me twice and bolt my face twice and I die. Fuck this card. I'm gonna offer them Ponderland as an appealing pile. Ah, they took the other one, damn it. So this is their ring bearer now, so they also get to loot. Yeah, I think I just flooded out here. And I don't think I can win through that amount of card advantage. I mean, what do you want me to say here? I get attacked for 6, and then I get bolted. That was super disappointing. Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is where I keep all of my deck lists online, and I actually want to show off a feature they made specifically for me, because their team is small and responsive. On the Settings and Decks tab, you can actually click Ignore Card Flavor Names to shut off displaying new names for cards, like Balaam's Tomb instead of Ancient Tomb. So if those sorts of things are annoying you online, here's how you shut it off. Okay. I am on the draw with a hand that I think is probably just a little bit too slow to keep in a Game 1 scenario where I don't know what my opponent is playing. This hand is a keep. My opponent is probably playing a fair blue deck. If that is the case, I think I pitch Chrome Mox after mulliganing and lean on 2 or 3 draw steps to get me my next land. Fantastic draw. Very happy with that. But man, like, playing out, shit. Just straight up got fucking Force of Willed. Pitching Sauron's Ransom, so we're gonna have to deal with that again. I'm very surprised to just, like, see Mom just immediately get Force of Willed. Did that target themselves? Yeah, that targeted themselves. So, since my opponent Force of Willed the first Mom, it might be correct for me to just play out a second Mom rather than immediately play out Thalia. Either one of them eats it to Orcish Bowmasters here, but I think I am down with this. They didn't have the Orcish Bowmasters last turn. Okay, that's fine. So that will just return Polluted Delta, and that is just some decent value. Alright, Delta comes back. I will not be blocking Sam. I'm much more interested in having Mother of Runes for the long run. Calder is a pretty terrible draw. Which of these messes with my opponent the most? Probably the Archon. It makes it much harder for my opponent to, like, Bowmasters and Swords to Plowshares in the same turn or something like that. This is going to be a very long round. Alright, we're seeing movement. It's weird that my opponent didn't fetch in response to Archon. Error? Potentially an error, and then we're going to cast like a Sauron's Ransom or something. That's fine, that's their one spell for the turn. They also don't get to immediately fetch and shuffle. Tapped Wasteland is great for me. I have to keep in mind that Orcish Bowmasters can happen at pretty much any moment. I really want to play out Thalia, but, like, it's so bad if my opponent has Orcish Bowmasters, and that is the case. Notably, I don't get to play both of my creatures this turn, because the first half of Archon's ability is symmetrical, the second half isn't. So let's attempt to keep some peace. That is odd. It's quite odd. I have to think about Snuff Out here. My opponent currently can't cast a spell. Kind of want to protect my Archon from black in response to that. It's about to lose this ability. That may just be bad, though. I'm going to let it happen. So I don't get to do this. This now gives me a reason to play out a Thalia, though. This is Force of Willable. And we did not end up eating a Snuff Out, which is nice. I have a pretty good board. Kaldra is hard castable in the not too distant future. My opponent's cantrips and pseudo cantrip effects are going to be awkward. Tapped fetch land is great. Chromok's not a great draw here. I'm fine crashing in. Some Sam loops could end up happening. Don't think I immediately just bounce Sam, though. Let's crash in for some damage. I think I'm letting that happen. Annoying. So I will protect Mom. So that fizzles the Orc. My opponent takes a good chunk of damage. I don't have anything to do except put Yorion into my hand, which will be worth the mana. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that's where I'm at. We'll see if my opponent can obliterate my board on their turn. It would need to remove Archon and then follow that up with more removal spells. That could be a trap. I'm just going to take that damage. My Archon gets in my way a little bit here. Hopefully it's in my opponent's way more. All right, we're seeing movement. What the fuck is this? Okay, it is legit just a 2/4 flash creature right now. That is going to make my combat slightly more awkward. All right. I don't think I want to tap Mother of Runes. Like, I can save Thalia. It's mostly like, do I want to imprint this Thalia under Chrome Mox? I can just leave Mother of Runes up and deal my opponent 5 damage. And play a new Thalia, which will also be uncounterable. I think I'm fine with that. Alright, my opponent's at 2. I will just recast this. I have lethal in the air next turn with protection. That should be fine. Because my opponent can only cast 1 spell. Yeah, you can Thoughtseize me. Alright, surprisingly. My opponent says, wow, this was miserable, stupid Archon. Ooh, okay. I don't know that I'm sideboarding. Like, my opponent's creatures are small, so Battle of Bywater doesn't make sense. Deafening Silence is of medium utility. Like, the Archon was very, very, very good. Don't get me wrong. Just unsure how much I need that. Feel a little weird playing the One Ring versus my opponent's Orcish Bowmasters deck, but they don't always have it. Maybe on the draw I'm supposed to play Deafening Silence. I'm going to say no. Let the record show that I have thought about it. How do we feel about this? Oh, man, Mom is so awkward on the draw versus the Orcish Bowmasters meta. Deal a lot of damage to myself. I'm very good at hardcasting a Batterskull. Hand gets improved by an insane number of draws. I am going to keep this despite the fact that it is awkward. Like, Prismatic Ending or equivalent on Chrome Mox is kind of the most awkward thing that could happen here. I think I'm imprinting Solitude. Lead on Mom. I think lead on Mom, make removal awkward. It's weird for double spelling. It's bad against Bowmasters. Let's do this still. No end of turn removal spell, which probably means Bowmasters. Don't really want to be in a double Ancient Tomb situation this early in the game. We'll see where this ends up going. Yeah. Thanks, I hate it. Okay, Plains is good. I could play Stoneforge and hardcast Jitte this turn, which I kind of like. I think I can wait on that and just get a feel for what's going on with the texture of my opponent's hand. Opposition Agent is very awkward for me right now. Solitude plus Samwise is cute. My opponent doesn't have blue mana. I'm never naming Gandalf. I think I'm just going to make Samwise more expensive. Stout-hearted. I think I'm just going to make that more expensive so that my opponent is more likely to just pitch that to Solitude and swing in for some damage. Alright, Solitude pitching Samwise. Mission accomplished. Goodbye, Peacekeeper. Wasteland is not something that I super care about here. Not going to remove Orcish Bowmasters right now. We'll see if my opponent wastelands me or holds up Opposition Agent. They hold up Opposition Agent, which I am going to attempt to remove. Let's do this like that. So there's Stoneforge. You cast Opposition Agent. I cast Swords to Plowshares on Opposition Agent. My opponent's last card wasn't exactly Force of Will, which I appreciate. I'm not sure which equipment to get. I think it's just Batterskull. That's hard castable if my opponent rips a removal spell off the top or has a removal spell as their last thing. And I am going to just go ahead and take my opponent off of raw amount of mana here. And we'll try to grind this game out a bit. Later. Super awkward that I don't have Jitte given that draw. Yeah, I'll just be passing the turn here. Alright, so Gandalf is fair game. We'll put in Batterskull. Love me an Archon. I think I just do my Batterskull attack before playing that. Alright, my opponent's at 17. I will be dropping an Archon while holding up Batterskull bounce. Okay. So my opponent's Ring Tempt Them stuff gets a little bit better. Their fetch lands are considerably worse. I'm playing around Orcish Bowmasters relatively well. I kind of just want to move my Batterskull to Archon of Emeria. I'm not going to do that, because then I can't bounce the Batterskull, but let the record show that I'm certainly thinking about it. Alright, 6 damage. Yeah. Do I take 2 to represent white mana? Don't think that matters right now. I am somewhat tempted to play out the One Ring just to give myself protection from Thoughtseize. I am going to do that. I am not going to draw cards with this. But this is just straight up protection from Thoughtseize, nothing else. I also kind of wonder if it's worth it to let my opponent amass orcs to draw cards. I'm not going to do that, but thinking about it. Sure. I think I don't draw cards. So my Yorion is guaranteed to resolve 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. I can play Thalia as well. This is fine. My opponent can block with Gandalf, replay Gandalf. That is a thing they would like to do right now. The answer is yes. They don't gain life this turn. I'll go ahead and play Thalia. Play Yorion. This only triggers from hand, by the way. Link Stoneforge. Opponent recasts Gandalf. I get some Stoneforge action. I think Jitte and Kaldra all, both win the game equally hard here. My opponent has 1 card available, meaning that, they can answer the Stoneforge and then I hardcast the Kaldra. Or if they spend their entire turn hardcasting a Force of Will, I think that also just favors me. Or no, they would not hardcast a Force of Will. Stoneforge. Alright. Skyclave's not bad. I'm going to go ahead and just cast that now. We're going to remove Orcish Bowmasters, I think, for obvious reasons. You can keep your Gandalf bounce thing. I think I just handily beat that. In. I'll leave this back. I don't think I have to attack. Sure. That's fine. So I've got the double block situation is okay with me. So I kill both of those. And while my opponent does not have access to Bowmasters, I'll go ahead and do this to see if I draw a land so that I can bounce a Batterskull if that's something that I want to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Not sure that I want to cast that. You're forcing my decision now. No bounce. Samwise is fine. Can return Wasteland, take out another Ancient Tomb. Then I only have 4 to equip in the short term. So my opponent can draw a card off the Gandalf interaction there. And then I lose Ancient Tomb. Yep. I would really like to draw a land. I drew a land. Okay, cool. So let's maybe equip a Batter Skull to a Stoneforge. That vigilance seems pretty relevant. Swing in, swing in. Opponent will do a Samwise block bounce, but then that means Yorion gets in for damage. Okay. Opponent goes to 5. My opponent has 1 unknown card in hand. It's a little annoying if it's exactly Orcish Bowmasters, but I am going to draw these cards. Okay, cool. Now I just try to wear down my opponent's resources while getting to enough mana to equip Caldra. A 2-mana Brainstorm. The Caracas is maybe not fully locked into dealing with Yorion or bouncing one of their creatures, but pretty close to it. Fetch lands are a little scary for my opponent. Individual points of life matter a lot. I'll lose some life to the One Ring. That's fine. Source of Plowshares is quite good. I can stop my opponent's loops, or I can just equip Caldra and present 2 different lethal threats. I think I stop my opponent's loops. Like, I think the way that I lose this is getting impatient here. No, I guess I didn't count my own Thalia attacks there. All right. My opponent's at 4. There's Sam. Returning Delta. Draw a card for Gandalf. Okay, this is fine. Opponent has to bounce Yorion now. I'm fine with this thing dying. I will continue to draw cards with the One Ring. Made a land drop, so I have 3, 6 mana to work with. That's probably Anointed Peacekeeper into Archon in that order. I'll name Dress Down, and then I'll drop an Archon. We have gotten the GGs from our opponent. That was a really cool match. Ugh. Okay, I've kept a hand here that is mana light, but has pretty solid promise. I have a decent turn 2 play versus combo, a decent turn 2 play versus fair decks, kind of depending on what I think I need to be doing here. I don't think I am in for wastelanding my opponent. I'm just trying to decide whether or not Thalia actually does anything. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think Stoneforge for Caldra, backed by... excuse me. Anyway, I think Stoneforge for Caldra, backed by both Wasteland and Caracas, probably ends up being better than just playing out Thalia here. Or Wastelanding, for that matter. Alright, so my opponent's got Flagstones, so they can start doing some Elvish Reclaimer nonsense if they would like. Nope, they're just gonna stick the Stoneforge in my hand. That's reasonable. I'll take a little bit of damage. If I wasteland my opponent's Yavimaya, I cut them off of green. I think I'm in for that. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think run back the Stoneforge Mystic play. The Thalia becomes slightly more attractive now. But I think trying to get my opponent dead is reasonable. I will get Jitte for variety here, because I already have a big fat piece of equipment to put into play, but I don't have too many plays if I get choked on mana. Jitte is at least something castable. I would get Lion Sash if I had that in this deck, but I don't. Okay, my opponent does have access to green mana and to Elvish Reclaimer tutoring. My line is pretty straightforward here. It's battle. And in the not too distant future, I can start thinking about something like Recruiter of the Guard for Solitude to create a safety net for a Merit Lodge coming through in a way that beats Caracas. Alright, my opponent's eating the damage. They'll fetch end of turn. Potentially just like tutor for a wasteland. Okay, so there's a plateau off the flagstones. Okay, they are going for a portion of the combo. Okay, they already had a wasteland in hand to take care of the Caracas. That's slightly problematic. Collector oof, sure. That's fine. I can take a little bit of damage here. I'm at 16. As long as my Cauldron Germ token doesn't leave play, like I have a clear path forward towards victory. I have a decent number of outs to what my opponent is doing over there. Swords, Caracas, Wasteland, Solitude. There's the 4th land drop. A crop rotation can start to be scary. A questing beast. Sure. Stoneforge probably needs to gain me 3 life here, right? Because it can't block this. Stoneforge is gaining me some life. I go to 10. My opponent is attacking for 9 next turn, which is totally fine. So I will just continue to be the beatdown here. That puts my opponent to 4. And I will play something that has the potential to gain me some life and stop something like a Minsk and Boo from just getting into play. Okay, Thalia's out of play. Well, the land itself also wouldn't have stopped Minsk and Boo from getting into play. Yeah, and I am dead the turn before my opponent kills me. We got choked on mana a little bit, but I am more or less happy with how we played that game. So we're playing against this like Naya mid-range depth deck, whatever you want to call it. I'm probably interested in the Battle of Bywater. Lauren is pretty underwhelming here for the most part. Thalia's not exactly fantastic, but has some utility, especially on the play. Probably trim a couple of Thalias and call that good. Okay, I consider my hand slow but reasonable here. I have a Swords for a turn 1 Elvish Reclaimer or other mana dork. Doesn't look like I have to do that. Yeah, that's fine. I am fine just making a land drop and passing the turn. Like these land drop situations are going to, I think, favor me more than my opponent. Oh yeah, Green Sun's fine. We'll take this out for the sake of mana efficiency. Oh, nice. This is a very good 1-2 punch against my opponent's deck. I think if one of my lands gets wastelanded, I want it to be the one that I have more copies of in my deck. And this probably punishes my opponent's non-basic heavy mana base as well. Nice. Didn't eat an immediate prismatic ending there. My opponent may get a pretty decent time walk in the form of a Swords to Plowshares here. But I think if they had Swords to Plowshares, they would have used it on their own turn, so their land would have entered untapped. But it shows what I know. That's okay. Like, I get Solitude to kind of break serve here. Like, I exile whatever creature my opponent plays. I have Jete equip on it. Or alternatively, I just slam Batter Skull. Both plays are just perfectly reasonable here. Ramunap is fine. Recruiter is solid as well. I'm just going to go ahead and cast Recruiter here. I think I'm in a situation where I would greatly prefer to have multiple bodies on board. And I think I am in for presenting my opponent with multiple different types of threats. Like, the Jete that's on board is scary. The Cauldron that I'm about to put in my hand is scary in a different way. Like, this kind of, like, one of these 2 cards requires a Swords to Plowshares, and I can do that while also equipping Jete here, which would probably require a second Swords. Crop Rotation punishes me a little bit. Yeah, that's slightly annoying. If my opponent had Crop Rotation, though, they could have, like, used it on their turn to make another land drop via Ramunap. Okay, sure. Sylvan Safekeeper is annoying versus my Solitude. I'm going to start by attempting to equip this. My opponent will give it protection and fizzle that. I'm not even going to attack because the attack is just actively bad for me, assuming my opponent plays anywhere near optimally. I'm going to go ahead and just put Yori into my hand, and we'll chill. Yep. So they activate that end of turn to make my equipment fall off. That's fine. Like, I will set up some long-term value, and if my opponent is in a situation where they always have to hold up 2 mana to not effectively lose the game to Jitte, I think that favors me. Reclaimer's fine. Okay, so they're going to do this basically to just untap that land. Yep. That's fine. I can take a little bit of damage here. Not particularly a problem. I have 6, kind of 7 mana. I think I'll flash Solitude in at my opponent's end of turn. Give them a chance to mess up and attack with Sylvan Safekeeper in combat. Okay, I'll let them go ahead and get that hit in, I think. I don't know, maybe I just like play this, target this, trade with this in combat so that they can't keep rebuying lands from graveyard with Sylvan Safekeeper. That does matter. No, I'm gonna take this. I can Solitude end of turn and then blink my Solitude for more value. Alright. Well, Solitude, I think targeting Elvish Reclaimer here. That's fine. Like, I'm glad that's being pulled from the deck, honestly. I have so much mana. Land's a little awkward for me. I probably don't need to waste 2 life here. This is awkward to exactly Endurance. Alright, my opponent's at 18. Go ahead and tap that for a green. Thank you. So I'll blink Solitude. Attempt to continue Solitude nonsense. This time it requires my opponent to sack a land, which they do, and then end of turn my opponent can decide whether or not they would like to Karakas my Yorion back to my hand. No is the answer, at least in the short term. Again, though, I'm kind of passively taxing my opponent's mana with like Tower of the Magistrate and these forced Sylvan Safekeeper / Elvish Reclaimer activations. Age is scary. Not immediately, because I have Karakas, but longer term, that is a problem. Love that. Let the record show that I am aware of the interaction between the One Ring giving protection from everything and Ancient Tomb. I just think it's correct to do it this way to give myself more flexibility in leaving up Karakas if I draw white spells, which I did not. I have protection from everything, so Merit Lodge is not an immediate problem. Man, Tower of the Magistrate is annoying, though. 2 mana, Tower. 2 mana, activate this. It's a 3/4. Attack with Solitude is dubious. Attack with Yorion is fine. Playing out Batterskull is not fine. I need to leave this up, so Jitte on Yorion is okay. Unless I'll attack in and my opponent will just Karakas Yorion. I don't need to necessarily like Karakas Merit Lodge immediately. I could tap out for Batterskull here, use my mana well, has some risk and downside associated with it, but just like puts this card into play so that I can wiggle myself into a situation where I can easily go above 20 life if I need to. Okay, sure. Alright, they're going to go for the Wasteland on my Karakas so that I can't Yorion bounce Solitude. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I just get 3 draws in my next turn cycle because of the One Ring. I'm pretty likely to find something that breaks me out of this spot in some capacity. A Wasteland, a Karakas, a Swords, a Solitude. Even a Skyclave. Well, Skyclave maybe doesn't do enough. There's a Green Sun. Collector Oof is a nuisance. And recurring the Wasteland is also annoying. I lost a lot of ground there. And a removal spell doesn't super easily just get me out of it. Noted. Debating whether or not I am playing out Caldra. I think no. I want to be able to Yorion post-combat. That's something that ends up mattering. I'll just taps this end of turn, undoes that. I'll hold this as a ball lightning in my hand. Okay, sure. Not planning for Collector Oof might lose me this game. Like, I could have Caracas bounced Yorion the turn that I tapped out to play Batterskull to play around that line better. Okay, sure. You're just gonna like... No, you can't Minsk and Boo. No, you could Minsk and Boo and fling it at my face. Lose a little life to the One Ring. There's a Swords to Plowshares, which my opponent undoes with Sylvan's Safekeeper. Alright, we're getting saucy here. I want to play a Caldra. I go ahead and attack with it. So my opponent activates Tower of the Magistrate. In response, I will Swords to Plowshares my own creature to gain 5 life and put me to 21, so that I am not dead to a Merit Lodge hit. I am buying time here. That is all that I am doing. There's a very good chance that I end up getting a timeout kill this round. I want my opponent to make the mistake of not bouncing my Yorion. If my opponent bounces the Yorion, I'm dead to Merit Lodge plus the One Ring trigger on my upkeep. But we are trying to buy a few seconds of time here. Yeah, so I go to 1, I die to the One Ring. That's fine. The loss is probably my fault in some capacity. Like, very early on, I had the option to just naked remove this or build my own board, and I chose to build my own board. And that ended up being costly because of Sylvan Safekeeper. I also think I win this game if this Collector Oof does not happen. Like, this is a spiraling resource. But the Oof did happen. GG's. Alright, we are playing a Yorion Mirror of some kind. If my opponent's playing traditional Death and Taxes, they're going to have Spirit of the Labyrinth, which makes keeping something like this awkward. If this is a blue pile, then having access to the One Ring quickly is fine. I am going to keep this. I think it's awkward, but I am hoping that the One Ring can carry this game. This hand will probably be the test of how good the One Ring is going to be in this shell. Cool. We're blessed enough for our opponent to not have a turn 1 play, while I have a turn 1 play. And I think this is good enough to do, rather than just immediately play a Chrome Mox. There's also some consideration to just Chrome Moxing an Archon immediately, in case my opponent plays Thalia, but Thalia is probably not the thing that my opponent wants to be playing in the mirror anyway. Kappa. Never fucking fails, folks. It never fails. Now I don't get to play Skyclave or Archon this turn. They didn't Chrome Mox last turn. Yeah, it's so awkward that I can't Skyclave this turn. I will live with it. I think I'm going with Archon under there. This is awkward to a Flicker Wisp, but I do care about the acceleration a decent amount right now. I'll take some damage. This is fine. Field of Ruin. Okay, same principle as being awkward to Flicker Wisp here. Yeah, this is weird, but I'm definitely taking out Thalia here so that I can just play the One Ring next turn. I do not want to trade here. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I don't want my opponent to Yorion Flicker this later, because it's a way to answer my ring. Yeah, okay. I'm going to give them a 2/2 in exchange for trading these bodies. Oh, Wasteland's annoying. Trailblazer's Torch. Sure. We'll see whose 4-mana artifact ends up being better. Am I playing my 4-mana artifact? I can recruit her for Mother of Runes right now, which is solid. What is the actual ability on this? Sure, that's fine. I kind of want to play the ring on the following turn and see if my opponent will trap themselves on accident. Yeah, I think I am going to do that. And we're just going to recruiter for a mom and make myself better at holding the initiative once I take it. A little iffy if my opponent ends up wastelanding me and I don't cast the One Ring and I do get trapped. But any white card or any land still lets me cast the One Ring. Oh, they're going down the scry side. That's reasonable. Alright, land drop from my opponent. 5 mana cards like Solitude are on the table. Ooh, there is a Swords. It's a Recruiter of the Guard. It's a little awkward because my opponent has no cards in hand, so it can't be something like a Solitude for maximum safety. Oh, they're still going with the Solitude. This may mean that I don't get wastelanded, though. Okay, they are going to do that. Well, I found mana anyway. So, yeah. Do the One Ring here. Get protection from everything. Start drawing cards. My recruiter will potentially get Solitude. Stash is going to give them a treasure token so that they can cast that. We're mostly just hoping to just dodge my opponent naturally drawing a Spirit of the Labyrinth. Okay, they drew a land. I think you're supposed to pressure my life total here. Like, that feels important when I have the One Ring in play. But we'll see if their decision ends up being correct. I have 7 total mana this turn, in kind of an awkward way. So I think this is my plan. I'm going to cast Flicker Wisp. I'm going to target my Recruiter of the Guard. My opponent will Solitude. This is bait. Solitude exiles Recruiter of the Guard. This is all fine. I Chrome Mox Mom. Yeah. Chrome Mox Mother of Runes. I have 2 mana available now. And I can play any 1 or 2 drop in my deck. Mom's not bad. Stoneforge is not bad. I think I like Stoneforge for Jitte. That just disrupts some of the Yorion nonsense that is coming in the not too distant future. And I take the initiative with Flicker Wisp next turn most of the time. Playing Mom makes that more likely. That's not the end of the world for me. Like, I have Jitte counters that can help clear that out of the way. Okay, that's fine. What is the timing on this? Whenever it becomes blocked. So I'm just going to eat that 3 damage. That's fine. I'm at 11. I lose a little bit of life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exactly. Wasteland becomes reasonable. Yeah, I think I'm hoping to dodge for a turn here. I think I attempt to wasteland my opponent off of their Yorion. I'm not sure if I take some damage off Ancient Tomb. I think I'm going with no on that. I think I will go ahead and equip 2 Flicker Wisp. Attack with Flicker Wisp. Take the initiative. Grab a basic. Put some counters on this. I think it is worth 2 life to move some counter, like to move a Jitte to a different creature to make the combat math more difficult for my opponent. But I haven't mathed out every combat math iteration here. Just the Menace Skeleton. Just -1/1 counter. What if I double block? No, I don't think that's better. Yeah, let's just kill that. Oh, they hit the land for Yorion. Sure. I presume that I need to remove one of these 2 right here. Probably the Recruiter. Yeah, I think it's the Recruiter. Trailblazer's Torch and Solitude will get exiled, so my opponent will take the initiative and Throne of the Dead 3. Solitude, remove my Flicker Wisp. It's an insanely complicated game. Okay, a Recruiter of the Guard comes in. Something that I was trying to avoid. I think after thinking about it some more, my line was double block the Skeleton, save the Jitte counters to remove Solitude. I think that's better. It's weird because like I have my Looming Yorion as well. And the One Ring is putting weird strain on my actions. With double Ancient Tomb, I should say. I think I am throwing away Stoneforge's Body for a couple of Jitte counters. Use that to remove Spirit of the Labyrinth and go from there after some One Ring draws. Maybe draw another One Ring, get protection from everything. Use my Ancient Tombs more effectively. Alright. Goodbye. Minus on Spirit. Now, we can go to the post-combat main phase. Draw some cards with the One Ring. A new Stoneforge Mystic. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Understood. So Yorion to hand. Cast Yorion. Blank Recruiter of the Guard and the One Ring. Return those. Yes. Pick up Solitude as a safety net. And I've got some trickery. Or if my opponent goes for a lethal attack. Okay, they've got a land. That's great. Skyclave Apparition. What are you taking? Okay, that's fine. That can turn into a 3/3 creature at instant speed. It seems like my opponent has Swords to Plow. They have Swords to Postures. They're just firing that off, right? Oh, it's an equip. Sure. They're going to shove with everything. Yorion blocks something. Yorion blocks Solitude. Yorion blocks Solitude. Remove both 4/4s. Take 2 damage. Sounds pretty good to me. Block there. Solitude, exiling this Stoneforge. Remove that Recruiter. You gain 4. I lose Solitude. Swords to Plowshares. Target Yorion. I take 2. Solitude dies. Now I have a Jitte against a relatively weak board, and I can take the initiative. Don't think I get to draw a card with the One Ring. That seems greedy. Oh, they have another playable card. Fuck yeah! What a game. Whew. So, I think I'm bringing these in. My opponent has Spirit of the Labyrinth that I need to clear for the One Ring in some instances. And they're going to have more Flicker Wisps than I do as well. I think I'm in for these. I don't know that I want to mess around with some of these symmetrical things. And I don't think I am interested in my own copies of Thalia here. I think that is the card that is going. Ugh. That is the sort of game that if I went back and like rewatched it and like did this while not doing commentary with half of my brain power, there were better lines available on both sides of the battlefield. Like, I know I missed some stuff that I didn't talk about, and so did my opponent. I guess I'm keeping 1 Thalia. And I am going to sit here and use this minute to refresh myself before we go into that next game. My opponent said, the ring is looking good in D&T. My bank account is quivering in fear. I don't know, friend. But I'm going to put in the legwork to try to help us figure that out. Now, I do sort of have one interesting thing on my side, and I'm going to keep this. I think it's medium. The thing that's on my side is that I am up a game, so I have the possibility of just going and timing my opponent out, which I think is super, super real. So yeah, we both used an exceptional amount of clock in game 1 here. Alright, that is a Thalia. Am I playing Caracas? Am I playing my own Thalia? I kind of want Thalia under Chrome Mox, but it's kind of awkward to play that out this early in the game. I think I am going to play my own. Playing my own Thalia makes Chrome Mox super awkward. Will my opponent attack if I play Thalia? No? Maybe? I think I'm going to work on building up my own mana. Let's Chrome Mox, pitch a Thalia, call it a turn. My opponent can potentially, like, Wasteland my Caracas and then play a new Thalia. If they do that, they're not really doing something that's super threatening to me, though. Port's annoying. Sure. I think Port is noticeably better than playing Thalia here. Ooh. Planning on Skyclaving Thalia, I might just play Anointed Peacekeeper. Oh, this is a little weird, because, like... Oh no, this one isn't symmetrical. Okay. Their Solitude's not threatening, their Spirit's not threatening. I'll name their Stoneforge Mystic. If I'm going to leverage time as an advantage, though, I need to spend less time thinking and talking about my plays. Because, like, I'm up a minute, but I can easily just lose a minute thinking about a difficult decision. Okay, lane's down. Alright, they are just going to Rashad and Port me and try to continue to make land drops. That's fine. It's not going to work out well for them based on that draw. Sure. So I will go ahead and start to battle. Opponent goes to 17. I will drop a Stoneforge Mystic. Mine aren't more expensive, just theirs. Yes. I kind of think I'm just trying to end this game with Kaldra, if I'm being honest. Jitte's a little awkward given how constrained my mana is. I think I'd rather just attack my opponent for 8 a couple of times and end this game. Okay, no end of turn play from my opponent. Like, they do have a Solitude. Wasteland's fine. I have 2 or 3 removal spells in hand, kind of depending on how you count things. Especially with Mom back up here. I think it's going to be tough for my opponent. Again, they also have to win 2 games in 7 minutes. That is a 4-mana Stoneforge Mystic. Finding Jitte. Sure. Recruiter's interesting. Just gives me another... That part's symmetrical. Awkward. Very awkward, actually. Skyclave answers Jitte. I guess I attack first here. Yeah. Alright, my opponent goes to 14. I cast a Recruiter. Yes, I'd like to pick up a good play on 2 mana. Another Stoneforge Mystic, I guess. Alternatively, I can pick up Lauren. Picking up Lauren is fine. Yeah, I forgot that the bottom portion of Anointed Peacekeeper is symmetrical, even though the top part is not. Now, if my opponent's... Well, a little weird, right? If they port me to keep me off of drawing a land to Stoneforge activate, they take away their own ability to activate Stoneforge end of turn and attempt to get Jitte counters. Yeah, this is an incredibly complicated game that my opponent is probably going to time out during. A Solitude occurs. Pitching Spirit is targeting this. I will play the game. Show me what your line is. A second Solitude. Also going to be targeting Anointed Peacekeeper, I imagine. Yes. This is all fine. I am prepared to beat this. So now my opponent puts in Jitte, goes all in on attempting to get Jitte counters, and gets blown out by my Solitude. Yep. I will Solitude, exile Skyclave, and my opponent concedes there. Ooh. Yeah, then on my turn, I can remove their Jitte and then just sit back for another turn until I put Kaldra into play. But that was a great pair of games. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to keep a hand that looks like this. I'm gonna go with no. This is fine. I think Chrome Mox is more valuable to me so that I can play Thalia on turn 1 than anything else here. I think I'm going to put a Solitude back into my deck so that I can draw that later and be fine with giving up a Lauren of the third path. I want this stop back now. Yeah, I am good with this. My turn got exponentially more complicated. I think it's going to end up being Wasteland my opponent and then play Chrome Mox afterwards to play around Days, and then Swords to Plowshares on their upkeep to play around Force of Negation protecting that card. Alright, take your card. I don't really want to Wasteland Delver, but I think the way my hand is set up, it will probably be correct to do so. Probably. So we will Chrome Mox, imprint Lauren, pass, do an upkeep Swords, attempt to clear the board, and hopefully that works. Assuming that works, I slime a Thalia, I make my opponent's cantrips very awkward, and then hope that that buys me time to make more land drops. Alright, fantastic. Okay, they did have another land drop. Ponder's fine. Basically, I just don't want my opponent being on board ahead of my Thalia, if possible. Alright, cool. Play this little lady. Days is fine. Played around that last turn cycle. Putting my opponent back a land drop when Thalia is my plan for this game is reasonable. Yeah, see, this is what I don't want. I don't want my opponent ahead on board before I stick Thalias. That's annoying. I just Recruiter for an answer to that? I don't think so. I think I keep the pressure on my opponent's mana base up, because this potentially sticks cantrips in their hand. The thing that I am afraid of is just natural land drop into Murktide Regent. Or alternatively, Dragon Rage Channeler. Like another one would be annoying. Oh, it's Orcish Bowmasters instead. Nope. Lightning Bolt, that's fine. But we now have the information that my opponent is Grixis. Lots of Bowmasters in Legacy now. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I cast this and then I figure it out from there. Happy to get fucking ecstatic to trade Recruiter of the Guard for Murktide Regent. Absolutely happy with that exchange. Fuck yeah. That's a Wasteland. Take 4. Okay, cool. So now I Recruiter of the Guard. Flicker Wisp is kind of interesting if my opponent has absolutely nothing. Otherwise, it's a bit risky. Very bad versus Orcish Bowmasters. I think because it's so bad versus Bowmasters, I just grab a different removal spell. This line is worse versus random removal spells like Snuff Out and Lightning Bolt. It'll leave my opponent with a 1/1 afterward. Sure. So no shuffle, they found something that they liked. I'll continue to take some damage. That's interesting. I'm not uninterested in doing that. But if I can do that around Days, I think it's preferable. Also, holding this to buy a turn versus a Murktide Regent is worth a decent amount. Alright, opponent's at 16. Go ahead and play my removal spell here. Rainstorm's fine. Just feels kind of weird to me. But hey, scoreboard. Alright, they topped whatever card that was here. And I take another Lightning Bolt worth of damage. Very solid top decks available to me. Definitely scared of Murktide Regent just happening. And I'm on a real clock from the One Ring. Sure. But I'm always playing that land out first to better play around Days. I do draw my card now. Orcish Bowmasters is awkward. I think I just accept that. My opponent says, in D&T even? Yeah, here we are. Where's your Bowmasters now? Please don't draw it. So good against me. I'm happy to see a land drop rather than any relevant spell. This does still have to attack, despite the fact that it's not going to do any damage to me. So I'll lose 1 from the 1 ring on my own turn. Aldra's not a great draw. Don't have Orcish Bowmasters, please. Fantastic. So now, I think I'll just play another one. Get another time walk here. Keep this one. I think it's worth drawing the card. I think it's worth drawing the card. And I'll go ahead and crash on in. Put my opponent to 13. It's possible I'm not supposed to draw that card, but it seems like I should be able to find another one of these or a way to blink it over the next couple of turns. Targeting a brainstorm, sure. My opponent hits me, but it doesn't do anything because of the 1 ring trigger. And then I kind of figure out how I want to approach things from here. I think the plan is just like resolve a Yorion and just let this deal 1 damage to me a turn. It's possible I'm supposed to draw these cards. I don't think so versus 3 onboard damage. I'm already dead to Lightning Bolt. I'm just going to accept that and be in a very good position if my opponent can't beat my Yorion next turn. Unholy Heat on Mob. Put a card on top. That's the Brainstorm that I know about. They have no cards in hand, so the attack is fine. Yeah, but I'm dead here if they just Mystic Sanctuary Lightning Bolt. But we'll see how this goes. They have 1 card in hand. If it's Lightning Bolt, I'm dead. If it's not Lightning Bolt, I'm pretty happy. It is Lightning Bolt. Let's see if I have an out. I had an out if I activated this before, but I don't usually hit Solitude or Swords with enough consistency that I think it's correct to do that. I'm going to let my opponent do their surveilling. So, I think I'm dead, right? I Solitude, get Recruiter, go to 1, die to this. Another Solitude doesn't get me out of that. So I shouldn't show my opponent that trick then? No, okay, there's 1 highly, highly unlikely sequence that can get me there. Okay, yeah. It is almost certainly not happening. 1 other target creature. I can't hit the Solitude itself. Go to 4. Go to 1. I need to hit a Solitude and a Swords to Plowshares here. I only hit 1 of them. And again, this is other creature. And now I take 3 and die. I'm so effing close. Alright, They'll I want these. I think I boarded out Lauren before. And I assume that my opponent is playing Orcish Bowmasters and trim these. Okay, I have kept my hand here. I don't think it is anything exciting, but I have the capability to ramp. Should I so choose, while also just having multiple removal spells. This is fine. I'm not like the happiest that Flicker Wisp is an X1 that dies to Orcish Bowmasters, but I'm okay with how things stand here. I don't intend on wastelanding my opponent. If I draw another land, I'll think about it. Was going to be the tail end of that thought. Alright. I'm not happy with it, but like, not sad about it either. Again, though, I want lots of land. No shuffle again. We're probably not sticking them on mana. I don't want to play Crumb Mox to put Yorion into my hand or play a Naked Flicker Wisp this turn, so we're just gonna chill. Crumb Mox is probably a dead card at this point. Like, I could be wrong. It may have its uses. But I am fully on the make my opponent commit a threat to the board, and then I'll start doing things. Like, my opponent could play just an Orcish Bowmasters as 2 power. That's fine. But they are certainly not doing that. Yeah, let's start trying to accumulate some value. This is a card that lines up pretty well versus Bowmasters. Like, they can take the body out, and it's annoying because I can't Yorion blink it later. But I can get an X2 creature here. I'm thinking about like a Stoneforge Mystic, I think. Just gives me something good and proactive to play. It's also not 3 power or greater for the purposes of this, which does matter. No Bowmasters yet. Okay, sure, there's a Wasteland. I guess I've got a fetch in play already. Dragon Rage Channeler is fine. Currently a 1/1, despite the fact that it is turn 5. Let's start with trying to remove that around a Spell Pierce. Success. Let's follow up with attempting a Stoneforge Mystic around a Daze. Success. Ooh, are we stifling? Immediate Lightning Bolt before I make the decision about which piece of equipment I'm going to get. That is certainly a decision you are legally allowed to make. So it's not Caldra. I have plenty of top end already. I think I just grabbed Jitte. Gives me something reasonable to cast next turn. And I think next turn is the answer. Like, my spells are so good, I don't think I immediately Chrome Mox any of these things away to cast a Dazable Jitte this turn. Sure, that's fine. My opponent's not wastelanding me. I really don't want a second Chrome Mox here. My opponent almost certainly has a removal spell. Give me multiple up. Going all in on Jitte doesn't make a ton of sense. Similarly, Flicker Wisp on Recruiter isn't the best. Do I just force my opponent's hand, though, and play the Jitte and make them expend resources on a Recruiter that I don't care about? That might actually just be the play. Like, just play hyper patiently. Tell me what you got. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and I don't think I Solitude this creature right now or anything. Like, I have an efficient 3-mana spell. Well, okay, maybe efficient isn't the right word. I have a 3-mana spell that I've been waiting to use to kill this card. And like, I have a Jitte chilling in play as well. I'm only taking 1 point of damage. It's just wild to me that my opponent hasn't wastelanded this. I think at this point, I do just play out a Chrome Mox. I think I imprint a Flicker Wisp. And I think I'm just going to pass the turn. I have Hardcast Solitude available. Sure. You may surveil. I think this is an okay time to hardcast this. I don't super mind trading with a Daze here. My mana situation is just a bit awkward since, like, I have this, like, Chrome Mox Caracas situation. We'll go ahead and take out that creature. Only worth 1 life as of right now. Unholy Heat is fine. I do Orcish Bowmasters versus. Maybe I do something like this. This Orcish Bowmasters isn't actually that good right now. And Force of Will and Spell Pierce aren't really good either. But my opponent will probably think Bowmasters is good. Maybe I do it like this. They get Bowmaster, Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce is actually kind of good versus that sometimes. I'm going to give them the option to take counter spells, which I don't think they'll take, and give them these. Okay, yeah, so they took Bowmasters. That's fine. Like, the Bowmasters loses out to my Jitte. An immediate fetch, and not for a Mystic Sanctuary. That may just mean you have Force of Will. I'd like to play this around Daze. Whatever, like, my creatures are replaceable. Sure. Okay, force pitching a Brainstorm. Perfectly happy with that outcome. I'll just pass the turn. Yep. Order. Bobbles, no big deal. So my opponent will know whatever my next card draw is. So take that. They know I have Wasteland. I don't think I'm supposed to play Yorion yet. I think I'll just play that next turn when I can do it around days without Chrome Moxing away one of these. Would you like to wasteland my wasteland? Thank you, Chrome Mox. I could wasteland their wasteland before I play this Karakos. It's not the worst. It's not great either. I think I am going to do that. Just trade these. Drop this. And again, I don't think I Chrome Mox one of these cards. Chrome Mox is for the early game. Bah. Sure. Yeah, we'll pass. I'm sitting on all the removal in the world. It's a relatively unexciting game of Magic. Fuck you, Chrome Mox. That is very statistically unlikely to happen. I feel like at some point my opponent is supposed to save lands for the purposes of Brainstorm. Yep. Just wait. My opponent decks before we do. Alright, there's a Murktide Regent. Cool. So we'll go ahead and cast a removal spell for that. Alright, we are getting, I presume, a Force of Negation. No, a Mystic Sanctuary. Or a Ponder. The creature gets bigger. And dies. Cool. Pass turn. 24 more turns till I jack my opponent. Fewer if they cantrip. Alright, there's a new Murktide Regent. I've drawn so many mana sources. So we'll go ahead and attempt to kill that one. We succeed. And I'll pass turn. It's turn 16. Alright, my opponent has finally played out their Orcish Bowmasters to just do a little bit of damage to me. It's going to give me a reasonable Skyclave target on my next turn. And something to pick off with Jitte counters. Sure. That's, in fact, a better Skyclave target. Alright, I will take 2. This is fine. Second Skyclave is good. I'll go ahead and play one of these. Take out Dragon Rage Channeler first. It has evasion. I'll play a second one of these. Take out Bowmasters. Are you attacking? No attack. Not sure if I'm supposed to play out Thalia prior to taking other game actions. I think no. Because it's just worse versus another Bowmasters if I do it with this timing. So let's go ahead and crash on in. Alright, no blocks from my opponent. I have successfully gotten Jitte counters. I will go ahead and now cast a Thalia. Attempt to move Jitte to Thalia, I think. Insulate her against Bowmasters unless my opponent has Bowmasters right now. Okay, they do have Bowmasters right now. That's fine. And we'll call that a turn. Like, I've still got active Jitte versus 2 small creatures. Like, that scenario favors me quite a bit. Not great versus Murktide Regent right now. I'm good versus most other things. I'll bite on that, I think. Is there any reason to? Maybe there's no reason to with Yorion coming. I'll take 2. Alright, I'm at 14. Understood. Play Skyclave. Exile Bowboy. I think I swing in with both creatures. I think that's fine. Okay, cool. Post-combat. We'll move these Jitte counters over here. Pass the turn. Surgical Extraction on Battle of the Bywater. Absolutely. There's one of those remaining in my deck. That was going to happen. Maybe that was supposed to happen on my draw step. I think it's time to just clear this orc. Bam. Bam. Sure. This is still fine. Yep, this is fine. Go ahead and finish that off. I think move the Jitte to a different body. Swing in with 2 creatures. Don't attack with this one. The chump block is perfectly acceptable here. Opponent goes to 7. I get 2 more Jitte counters. I drop a Plains. My opponent doesn't have Hardcast Force of Will available right now. So I think I am good just casting this as a dork. Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. I have multiple different bodies here. I think Skyclave Apparition beats like a Murktide Regent in combat. I think I'm interested in +2/+2 on one of these. Equip to another one. My opponent gives up. Forgot this was not a second game here. Or rather, that we're going to another game. Yeah, so it's possible one of us times out here. Am I interested in the One Ring in a 3-minute long game? Sometimes buys me a turn. I think I'm going to just play Lauren as a card that imprints under Chrome Mox. The One Ring doesn't. I don't think we're going to draw all 4 copies of Chrome Mox again. But you never know. This hand's great. I have less time on the clock than my opponent, but my opponent's decisions are going to take longer than average than mine will. Alright, sure. I assume they just have to lead on a turn 1 creature here with most of their hands. I presume they're going to have Force of Will backup, but we are in Turbo Magic mode here for sure. Okay, cool. Oh, cool. This is great. Yeah, cast Thalia. Follow up with Archon in the not too distant future. I don't think it's worth taking 2 this early versus this deck. Fantastic. It's possible this just eats Bowmasters here. And like that's slightly awkward for me. If it happens, it happens. Unholy Heat is fine. I'm going to take 2 to play Archon around Days here. It's in play. I've got Anointed Peacekeeper for next turn. My Chrome Mox not looking the best right now. Lightning Bolt's fine. Yep. Drop Anointed Peacekeeper. I'll name Murktide Regent. Just need to buy time to find a way to answer that, I think. It's possible that I'm supposed to name Dragon Rage Channeler there to force my opponent to... Oh, they're not even going to play that? Sure. I'm going to do suboptimal sequencing here for the sake of time. Hit my opponent for 3. There's a Wasteland. That's fine. I know my opponent has Days, so playing Yorion won't make sense on my turn. Okay. That's fine. Do I Wasteland? Maybe I don't Wasteland. I just play Yorion next turn. Around Days. And then I Wasteland afterwards. Nullrod is fine. That has minimal impact on this game. I'm never casting this Chrome Mox in all likelihood anyway. Okay, cool. Play this. Attack for 3 now. Put my opponent to 10. Cast Yorion. I am fine blinking this to just take another look at my opponent's hand. I'll return this. I will name Murktide Regent again. I will Wasteland my opponent off of, I think, red. Maybe it's black for Snuff Out. I don't really have time to think, though. Kappa. Like, Snuff Out doesn't matter after I get 1 or maybe 2 draws. I'm supposed to Wasteland off black pre-combat. Sure. Opponent goes to 6. Set an upkeep stop on their turn. On their turn, sacrifice, blow up Underground Sea, then remove this stop. Their Wasteland doesn't really do anything. I attack them for 7 and they die. Unless they have Lightning Bolt. But we'll go ahead and take that out now. And swinging for 7. Winning a game in about 2 minutes, I think. Oh, are you really just going to salt off and sit there for the last minute? Oh, no. Taking the time to write a GG's. GG's, yeah. Crazy stuff. So we end up with a 3-2 positive record in this league. So where do we end up regarding the One Ring in Death and Taxes? I think this is one of those times where let me know in the comments below what you think. I think the biggest thing that I want to convey in my conclusion here is that Legacy has changed and you need to change with it. Like, the deck building decisions that I made to play around Orcish Bowmasters were incredibly rewarded throughout this league as my larger creatures like Archon of Emeria and Anointed Peacekeeper were not killed by my opponent's removal spell. And I literally have no idea how many rounds my opponent in that last round sat there holding an Orcish Bowmasters without playing it because, like, they thought, like, this is a removal spell. And in reality, it was incredibly difficult for them to use that as a removal spell. Now, how do we feel regarding the One Ring specifically? I have mixed thoughts because it buried my opponent in a couple of games, and it was like a nail biter versus Orcish Bowmasters in another. And maybe I need a little more life gain in this deck if I'm going to support both Ancient Tomb and the One Ring at the same time. I thought like Jitte plus Batterskull would probably be enough, like Solitude to a lesser extent as well, but like maybe I need another lifelinker like an Extraction Specialist or something to help that out, because we definitely died to our own The One Ring a couple of times. Death and Taxes isn't the best at slamming the door on a game and pivoting within a turn or two, but I liked a lot of the things that I was experimenting with in this league. And if you are a Death and Taxes player, pick up where I left off here, put in the legwork, try some of this stuff out, see what works, see what doesn't. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. You end up needing to buy the Battle of Bywater or some other things, consider checking out Cool Stuff Inc. Use promo code ThrabenU, save 5% on that order. And see you tomorrow.